that my dad used really to teach me how to imagine was the art of storytelling and the art of dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that that in and of itself is a lost art because the generation now is so quick. Yes, you have to be an innovator. Yes, we want you to come up with solutions and co-create. But persons need to be allowed to imagine and dream. And as a result of that being inculcated in me as a child, I was able to dream myself out of poverty. You
Right.
know, so it really starts there at the community level, engaging at the family level, engaging at the community level, and then you funnel that up to the business level because once you're able to reach people very young, starting with the children at home, then you're going to be able to create a very powerful generation.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that is where the conversation needs to start.
I love the story you just shared, Lisa, about your childhood. I was going to share it as a part of this discussion, and I think this segues nicely. When I was younger and I was in primary school, I used to watch Emerald. I'm not sure if you guys know, is the chef cooking all the time, and I was obsessed with becoming a chef. I thought I could cook. I thought I was going to be a chef. And I remember we went around the classroom one time. We were in class 6, and my teacher said, what does everyone want to be? And most people didn't know exactly what they wanted to be. And I said, well, I'm going to be a chef and I'm going to attend the New York School of Culinary Arts because this is what I had dreamed about, like what you're sharing. I dreamt about this since, just all summer looking at these shows and just imagining myself in that space and having my own show. No, I'm not a chef today, but cultivating that habit, I would say for me personally, has been so useful. And I love how you start with dreaming because a lot of times when kids are younger, after a certain age, they tell you, well, you need to face reality. But what is reality, right? Zwede, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, because Lisa spoke about failure and Lisa spoke about dreaming, and you're someone that you've been through the ring. I don't know your entire story, but I know that you don't get to where you are right now on an easy path.
No, definitely. I mean, definitely not. Yeah. Just speaking on failure, failure is part of the journey to whatever success is. You have to be willing to fail and fail and fail again and get up and try again. So from that perspective, yeah, we have to definitely become a bit more of well, we are resilient people. I think just as relates to doing business, understanding that failure is part of this entire journey. So it's about trying to mitigate these failures as best as you can, but then there's a lesson to be learned in each of them. But just as well to go back to story generally, I think that it is tremendously important as it relates to culture. And culture is impactful in various aspects of life. I mean, it have music, it have food, it have sports, it have various aspects that sort of like create culture. And I think that these stories, as tied to culture, really have been able to transcend the world as it relates to, especially what we would typically think of from a business perspective, what is scalable for the Caribbean, because Caribbean might have been always seen as small. But when you look at the stories of the Usain Bolts, the Bob Marley's, Rihanna's, they are and have been already proof of examples of where our culture have transcended scale. So I think that just playing on these stories and really creating legends out of these stories are important for us just to, maintain, but also there are a lot of them out there. So I think that having these conversations and exposing some of these stories of literally opportunities and moments that transcended what was normal. So I think that as well just ties generally to our culture. And when you look at our culture, we have a very wide and diverse culture for a small region of people typically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that yes, stories play an impactful part, but also in all of these stories, there's a level of failure. So I think that ties as well, and just get to understand that failure doesn't necessarily make the person or the outcome. Is how you deal with failure and overcome it. So I mean, just getting these stories out there and tying them to aspects of our culture, I think that would be very impactful in terms of having that emotional impact. So I think it all ties together very well.
Nice. So Dawson, what Lisa and Zwede spoke about, talking about dreams, we're talking about stories, and everyone at some point, even if they don't share it, everyone has a dream. even if they don't share it, somewhere in their mind, maybe they may be a little insecure about it, they have a dream. And a lot of times people get stuck, most of the time people get stuck when they have that first failure, they have that second failure, they give up. What can we do, or what is the cultural shift we need to take place, or what are some of the actionable opportunities you would say that could help to reframe how people see failure, and instead of seeing it as an undesirable part of their story, seeing it as an essential part of their story, and something that they come to celebrate. Because me personally, my life did not transform until I looked in the mirror and was like, yo, you are going to fail, and you're going to fail again, and you're going to fail and fail and fail, and you need to be okay with that. How do we get that across to people?
Okay, so for me, I'll take the first part, which is I think there's a need for addressing it, because I think Lisa mentioned it when we started. Is there's a tremendous fear of failure culturally across our region, and so there's a need to shift that. I think starting to address that, begins with mentorship. I think it's something that we talk a lot about, but it's not something that we have pushed to the forefront as not in nice to have, but in necessity, right? And I think it starts there. There's someone who has taken the journey you're on, or at least attempted to do what you've tried to do. And I believe that learning from that person and the ability to interact and to share and have that person or persons share with you, has a lot of value. It may be just simply saying, here's what I did, here's where I went wrong, or here are the reasons why you need to pivot, right? And so I think for me, that's one of the major keys in probably turning around the perspective of what it is to fail, and the stories that we start telling around, shifting from failure and, moving towards success. And I do think it starts with, having a mentor, identifying mentors who have, attempted to do what you're trying to do, or at least, taking a serious look at the path you're taking and saying, and being able to guide and give some insight into, in some of the things that you need to do.
Lovely.
Just a button real quick, it's funny. You said something to hear there. I will fail and fail. I have somebody to introduce you to after this at some point, right? His name is Tim Draper. So I went, and when I got up, I got this card from my backpack. So the program, the accelerator program I just participated in, it was a program called Draper University, and has a little pledge at the back of it, right? And number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I will fail and fail again until I succeed. So he wrote out a couple lines that he believes should be some of the core values of being a successful entrepreneur, and one of them is failing. So he's a big person and taking risks. But just to even go a little bit further and to expand on what Dawson said, I think that as a Caribbean people, we have been sort of like a fearful people as it related to business, because we tend to be people who scrutinize a lot sometimes failures in the past. So I think that is something that needs to be changed as well, in terms of how our outlook as people view failures. Sometimes we have seen before in the past, I know at least in Trinidad, folks who fail business, and then is people talking about them, and there's all this backlash and all that, So I think that we have to be more of an open mind as relates to the elders. They need to be more risk takers to provide opportunities for us to risk and even fail. And then also we have to have a mindset to understand that not all failures are a bad thing. Sometimes you have to dig deeper, a little level deeper, to understand why this business would have failed. Also, part of innovating requires failure. So I think that just having an open mind on both ends is important as well for us to kind of shift things.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pivot a question to you, Lisa. But what you guys have been saying a few years ago, back in 2017, I remember I was asked to speak to the graduating class at the sixth form. And I remember them, hey, we want you to speak and such, because they looked from the outside and they saw a success. And I knew where I was at that time. and I was failing badly. And I felt to myself, how do I go and tell these kids, how do I pretend, how do I give a self-righteous speech about success when in and of myself, I know how I'm struggling in this moment. And so I gave a whole presentation to sixth formers, telling them as they graduated, going out into the real world, telling them that I want them to fail. And I want them to fail again. And I know some people in the crowd are like, what are you telling these kids? But for me, that was the most liberating moment, perhaps of my adult life at that point in 2017, when I was able to say, I failed so many times and here I am. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. Lisa, what do you think? I mean, you guys are doing such phenomenal work at the OECS, and I know there are a number of different programs, and there are all sorts of initiatives and opportunities of which I am very grateful to be a part of. What do you think, or what are some of the support mechanisms that are in place right now to support not just entrepreneurs, but people just growing in their careers, young people in school? What would you say are or if not support mechanisms, opportunities to develop or expand on support mechanisms for people to reframe how they see themselves and how they see failure as a part of their story?
Thank you so much for that question, Tahira. And Zwedi said something earlier in his commentary that part particular perspective I have, and that perspective is the perspective of competition and how it is viewed and seen. Yeah? One of the things that we do as Caribbean people sometimes, and is that we're afraid of competition. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Yeah.
We're afraid of competition. When somebody starts something, feel threatened. Yeah. So we compete and we're afraid of it. We're afraid when an outsider comes from outside a region or outside a country and starts something. But I remember having the privilege of participating in a small talk with Paul Alstrom, who is a global venture capitalist. Mm-hmm. And in his presentation, I remember him saying, "Let 1,000 roses bloom." And it ticked off something in my head. And the concept of allowing 1,000 roses to bloom means that you are able to, one, look at your own strengths and your own conviction and being confident in that, mm-hmm. and pursuing with all that you have inside of you to reach towards your dream and your aspirations. The accelerator programs, the community youth groups, and everything is there. The Caribbean is not short on social interventions. We're not short on support mechanisms.
Right.
And what we're short on, I do believe, is programs that address the mindset. And I will always go back to mindset. In my former role at the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, which is the Caribbean's premier business development organization, and mm-hmm. I say that without apology, and it's not because I'm Jamaican, it is because it is true. In the accelerator program that happens, that JBDC implements, they mm-hmm. have a module that is called Entrepreneurial Spirit. And that particular program is all about mindset. It is mm-hmm. about correcting mindset. Mindset is everything, Yeah. Mindset is everything. And when we talk about the mind, you're talking about renewal and the ability really to see the thing before even it manifests and believe that it will happen. Yeah. Making the declarations and confirming and reaffirming the affirmations on a daily basis. So those types of mechanisms need to be built in. It needs to be built in at the high school level. Yes. Very, very important at the high school level. It needs to be built in even before that. Kindergarten, preschool, primary school, and also at the university level as well. Within the communities, at the community groups, within the organizations. I mean, I've had mentors mm-hmm. from my previous jobs and connections and assignments, Yeah. And one of the key things that they've been able to really impart on me as an individual is the having and possessing the right mindset and surrounding yourself with persons who will basically groom you into having a mindset that is not just positive, but a mindset that will allow you to evolve outside of the box constantly.
Yeah.
And I always say this to my children, persons who are in close contact with me, you know, I don't compete with people. I compete with myself. I compete with becoming a bigger and better version of Lisa Taylor Stone. If I design or implement a particular program this year, mark you, I'm going to sit down for months and do research and see how best I can outdo what I've done.
Right.
And that is the nucleus of transformation. When I remember about a year and a half ago, I visited South Korea and I was able to get into really the culture and understand the tremendous growth that happened in that country. 50 years of moving from a society that was almost agrarian to some things that I see in Wakanda, the movie with Black Panther, that movie.
Yeah.
Yes, you're seeing these architectural designs and these things in South Korea with robots in KFC and thing, and they're having an open library where you can just go in, scan out the books. There's nobody inside there working, and the level of honesty and understanding that happens in that country. And when I did some research, interviewed some persons, it went back to the culture.
Yeah.
There was a rapid and swift mindset that had to take place in a very quick way, very agile about it, because they understood the key of urgency, you know?
Yeah.
And at the OACS coming, and I'm going to bring it right back to the Sustainable Development Movement. Now, in 2019, we had to do something that was different.
Yep.
We had to do something that was business unusual. You can't go out and want to stand out and dress like everybody else. You know, it don't work like that any at all. So we had to allow ourselves as an organization to become a spectacle. And in order to become a spectacle, you create a stage. You know, I had the privilege of attending a seminar with Grant Cardone before COVID was keeping in Miami. And there was a speaker, I can't remember his name, but he was teaching on the importance of creating stages. And I took the concept of creating stages to basically implement projects that create a stage for the organization where you have multiple partners coming in on that stage and you start a conversation, create a hook, you hook the people and then you move in on it. And that particular mindset, that is something that we need to be taught how to do in the Caribbean and do it very well.
Yeah.
It boils right back down to mindset.
Yes, that's you said build a stage. I have on the whiteboard in the office, build a platform. This is what it is. Love it. And what I'm hearing reverberating, it's the content that you guys are taking in as well. It's who you're engaged with and what you're feeding your mind. I had a conversation with a young person the other day, and I was saying, I'm not an academic. I'm the furthest thing from an academic. But if I had one opportunity to change anything within our education system, it would be from the kindergarten level, from preschool, to have kids setting out their affirmations and reciting them and speaking life into themselves and have the whole system set up in a way where were you to say something that diminishes yourself or somebody else, you're immediately brought up on that because you understand the power of words and how that will impact your life. Thank you guys so much for the answers to those questions. I think we're off to a great start. And I'm going to shift right into part 2 of the discussion, which is digital platforms for storytelling. Because we're talking about dreaming, we're talking about failure, we're talking about mindset, we're talking about affirming ourselves, we're talking about building a stage. Essential to building a stage is also knowing what is on that stage. And Lisa, with the Sustainable Development Movement, you haven't just built a stage to promote the OECS, you've built a stage that empowers so many people across the entire region and internationally. And so my question, and I'll start with yourself, Dawson, because I think you're right in that space, is What is the role of digital platforms in telling Caribbean stories? And the second part of that question, what are some regional platforms persons should be on the lookout for, or regional platforms persons have access to tell and amplify their stories?
Okay. In terms of the platform's role, I think the first thing is to simplify the process, right? Mm-hmm. I think we have to make it, and this is speaking to transformation, we have to make it easy or easier for persons to, to create and to build their story in these platforms. So right. I think that's the first piece that I'd speak to in terms of, what the platforms should be doing. Mm-hmm. I think from, how these persons can use that platform, these platforms, it starts with, understanding what is your story and what are you trying to say, which then will determine, probably the best platform for you to use to do so. Right. Lisa mentioned, obviously for businesses, having that platform that they created, so for a business person who is, looking to grow and develop their skills in that space, that may be the space to do it. Right. In terms of, some of the platforms that I'm involved with, for example, Go Loud, and we'll probably touch on that a bit later. It's a podcast platform. It may be great for someone who, has a story to tell, wants to talk about an entrepreneurial journey, a personal journey, a musical journey, wants to share about financial education, and there's many examples of that. So, I think, there are many. There are different, opportunities for persons to engage with those platforms, and I'll touch on it later. I won't get into that now. Mm-hmm. But I do think that, it is really the chance for people to go out there and see what their story is, to define that story, and to find the best platform that they'd like to use to tell that story.
Right, and thank you for that, Dawson. Zwede, I'm going to come to you because I know that you've built a platform to not just tell stories, but to engage in commerce, to make some money as well, right? What are your thoughts on that, in terms of what are the platforms, what are some of the regional platforms that persons can use to tell their stories?
I mean, right now we have the powerhouses. So people use Instagram, they use TikTok, they use Twitter, they use Facebook. I mean, some people use all of them. You understand? Mm-hmm. So right now, I think that generally we consume a lot of social media on these international platforms. So I think that the opportunity is tremendous for us to, one, use platforms to create our stories because we're doing it. An interesting statistic in Trinidad is that we have more smartphones than people, and we had like an absurdly high amount of social media penetration, meaning the amount of people who have and use social media. So it's clear that this region, at least, we consume a lot and have a lot of stories to tell. Maybe that is why we use it so much. So I think that the opportunity is there, and part of the reason why we created our own platform, as you said, not only just to tell stories but do commerce, is that we observed a shift in terms of the psychology of some of this storytelling using the current digital platforms. Meaning, let's say on Instagram, not to call any names, but let's say one of the common trends is that you would hear about flexing on social media. So let's say somebody get a new car and they want to post up a new car, but the whole psychology behind it is to show off, but not actually to give a ride to somebody, to help somebody get from point A to point B. So I think that observing some of the psychology behind how we use these current platforms to tell stories, I think there was an opportunity to create one that is a bit more purpose-driven. So that was the idea behind us creating Lulu, a platform where you could we are still building it. So just to be clear about it, apps are scale over time, so we're still in the process of building it. But understanding what we want to build, a big part of it is how do we engage community. And again, engaging community, we are looking at aspects of culture. So there would be a sport-specific vertical, a vertical for food. So we're looking to really get intertwined and understand culture, and part of that will be storytelling. So I think that these are some of the areas that we are consistently working on right now. But as relates to our direction, the stories that will be told on our platform will be stories of creating value, meaning the idea behind e-commerce is that people use social media right now to sell, to do a lot of business. Billions of dollars worth of transactions takes place on WhatsApp, but there is no actual transactional process as yet built into it. So we have an opportunity now to allow you to communicate with friends and family. You can connect in your network to leverage and find resources that you're interested in. So products, services, accommodation, stays, so it's a platform that's centered around creating value, and a big part of that will be telling the story behind the culture of it, So we are in the process of figuring it out, and this was actually a very interesting conversation that I had. I was able to stimulate some thought in the process of it that I think would be an integral part of our marketing campaigns as related to the storytelling. So I was actually thankful for this and this topic because it brought some insight to an area that I wasn't necessarily focused on. But in terms of our community aspect, a big part will be storytelling and then influencing culture through stories. So yeah.
Right. And thank you guys, both Dawson and Zwede, for sharing on that. And my next question is, what are some of the opportunities that exist to use platforms to promote Caribbean stories? And I want to pivot this question a bit because initially I had to use digital platforms to promote Caribbean stories. But I really want to understand from everybody, what are some of the opportunities you guys think? And let's think about platforms from the perspective of the stage that Lisa is talking about, right? Just creating opportunities for people to connect and get out there and engage with one another. And I'm asking this question because Lisa and you and I have had this conversation briefly or in some part before, where when we look around, just the other day we saw that Rihanna is worth $1 billion, right? And when I saw that, I said, wow. I was so happy because, Lisa, I was so happy because I remember Rihanna's like a year older than I am, but I remember growing up being a 16, 17-year-old and seeing Rihanna come on the scene and hearing people say, oh, she's not going to last, she's going to be a one-hit wonder, and then seeing how she's been able to transform and build her brand and doing all of that coming from Barbados, right? But she's one example and one of a few examples that we really get to hear about. Most of the times we don't hear those stories. And so my real question is, when we see the media, when we engage online, when we engage in person, when we read the news, whatever it is, it's not very often that we hear about Caribbean people in the most magnificent of spaces. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't in those spaces, because we are in those spaces, but we very seldom hear about that. And Dawson, and not only do we seldom hear about that, but when we see the stories, when we see, whether it's through music, whether it's through whether it's a book, whether it's in the movies, whether it's in the sitcoms, we all know that when a new idea is coming on the scene, if they want the culture to embrace that idea, what they do is they put it on TV. They put it on TV. They integrate it into every aspect of our lives. How do we integrate Caribbean success, Caribbean greatness into every aspect of our lives as Caribbean people? Guys, who wants to go first? Zwede, you're first. You leaned into the camera. I know that's a heavy question. I know it's a heavy question.
Well, I think a part of the lack of some of these success stories is one is brain drain. That is actually a factual thing. A lot of our good talent, they migrated and they never look back. so that is something that has happened, and it is so funny because I see it even among some of high-performing technology companies. You would hear, this person is a Trinidadian, this person is a Jamaican, and this person, it is not that uncommon. Even while I was just here the other day, a VC firm I was speaking to, there's like, oh no, this girl is a Trinidadian and she is like an expert in this blockchain space. But I mean, I didn't necessarily know of her from Trinidad. So I think that I mean, just kind of us getting back intact with some of these, again, these, although that may not be as big as Rihanna, but there
Yeah,
are
yeah,
some
yeah.
pretty big stories there out there that are industry relevant. You know, so I think that, I mean, there are people who are literally world ranked in their current fields in the industry. It mightn't be a celebrity, it might be popular, but they are experts at what they do. So I think that, you know, getting in touch and finding some of these hidden gems across various industries would be of a lot of value as well, you know, because in all rights, they are major success stories as well, you know. So I think that, and everyone has their own story. So even though someone may not be as famous or as popular, you could still get some world changing stories from some of the most humble people, you know. So I think that, yeah, extracting and finding some of these hidden gems across various industries, but also, you know, challenging some of the experts who have been outside of the Caribbean for a long time but have a lot of insight and experts in the career. Got to find ways to get them involved back on the islands and back in the communities. I think that there's a lot of value there. So, I mean, it's a kind of hand-in-hand relationship. We need to figure out, find some of them, and then, you know, get them involved back in some of the local and regional operations. I think that would be good.
Yeah, because when you speak of brain drain, a lot of times people think of the Caribbean and say, boy, there's no opportunity in the Caribbean. You know, if I want opportunity, I need to go to a developed space like the US or somewhere in Europe. I mean, I think the opposite. I think that this is the perfect space to create, right? But I like that answer, Zwedi. Dawson?
Yeah, I think, I think there's an entire loop here, and we've touched on a few of those. So we talked about failure, right? But some of that fear of failure comes from our educational system, and you touched on it, Tahira. We have a pass-fail system.
Yeah.
And so from a very early age, you know, there's devastation upon failure in an exam, and that carries on through our culture, right?
Yep.
So we have that happen, and then there's sometimes, I would say, not an incorrect narrative told about, you know, becoming successful in the region, which also encourages the brain drain, which also encourages the person who leaves to really maybe lose interest in returning or even reinvesting. And I'm not speaking about reinvesting necessarily capital, but coming back to return some of that knowledge that they gain. So to Zwedi's point, you know, and I'm pulling all the pieces together that we have touched on. You know, we do have a responsibility of, again, with the platforms that we create, with the platforms that we're involved in, to reach out to some of these people, to start rewriting that narrative, and maybe even there's an opportunity to change some perspective, their own perspectives, because obviously some of this is based on experience. This response is also coming from experience, right?
Right.
I think we need to start creating more positive experiences around, you know, what it means to be successful, and I think that needs to be redefined as well. And I think with that happening in the region, starting here, and creating platforms and using platforms that exist. I mean, I'll call a name, LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah.
Probably a good place to start for something like that, where we encourage, you know, our persons who have done great things. And what I want to touch on as well is, you know, we haven't just become being great. You know, we have had many examples of success from this part of the world. I would make an argument that as a region, you know, we've had, you know, some of the heaviest impact globally, based on the size of our islands. We have St. Lucia; they have had 2 Nobel laureates, and I won't go through the list. We have Sheikh Keen from St. Vincent, and the list goes on. There's Ray Williams from St. Vincent as well. He's a Grammy winner who created Melodyne. These are stories that need to be told and retold. I think they have been told, but again, this is where we can tie the digital together as well, is now there's an opportunity to repackage, reframe, and redistribute some of these stories. And I think there's no better time than now to do so.
To write our own, to basically write our history. Yeah? Essentially.
To write our history, and I think to also to reintroduce some of it. I think we do have a situation where some of these successes are being lost. You know, we talked about Rihanna, we talked about Usain Bolt. Those are the ones that are constantly in our faces, but there have been so many others, as Zwedi would have alluded to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it have plenty across multiple industries. It's just that some of them got lost, you know. So you're right, is to reestablish some of these hidden gems and bring them to the forefront.
Dawson, you spoke about a narrative related to success. I wanted you to just expand on that a little bit. You alluded to it. In your, just the narrative when persons become successful, maybe there's a narrative around that and maybe they don't necessarily want to be in the space.
Well, I you know, I think we've probably always seen graphics or memes that show this. You know, the path to success is normally viewed as a straight line, but really it's gaps and valleys and hills and mountains. I think, and again, it comes back to something Lisa touched on earlier with mindset. And again, back to the educational system where we start that mindset from a very early age. If you do not succeed, you know, trying to do it in this manner, there's another way. It doesn't mean that is the end. It doesn't mean there's finality there.
Right.
Right? And so that's what I'm talking to when I talk about redefining what success is. In terms of our careers, you know, there is the opportunity to pivot. You know, I know, you know, traditionally in the region, we've seen people in certain roles and positions for years and years and years. They never move. Sometimes someone moving into a different arena is looked down upon even today. And why should that be? We are allowed, we are flexible, you know, and I think we are agile as humans, and we should be allowed the ability to grow and to move into whatever spaces that we believe that we can be successful. I think that needs to be embraced. So I think when I talk about redefining what success is, I think it starts, you know, at the beginning of this process with mindset, as Lisa mentioned.
Right. Thank you. Lisa?
Yes, thanks, Tahira. Why, I must say that we have an amazing panel. I'm learning so much from Zwedi and Dawson. Just to put my own perspective in terms of the last question you asked about suggestions that would amplify the story as island people. And I go back to partnerships. Very important. Some of the more successful persons, I believe, should, you know, extend a hand where you allow everyday, normal heroes that nobody recognizes and see. Give them a platform to tell their own stories. And I mean, I once heard somebody say, if you weren't given a seat at the table, you know, pull up a chair.
Yeah.
You know, that type of a mentality, mindset type of thing, and create an opportunity for yourself as well to tell your own story. You know, it's one sea starfish at a time, pretty much being able to make a difference in your neck of the woods and being impactful about it. I remember a few years ago in 2010, it's actually 11 years ago, that's a very long time.
I'm telling you.
We started a program in Franklin Town, an inner city community in Jamaica. And usually when you're walking past, you know, sometimes persons will stop you on the corner of the street and ask you for money. And at the time, even now, I don't think that's a sustainable way of helping somebody, because they keep on giving them fish. At one point, I'm going to run out of fish and I'm going to be hungry too. And I don't like being hungry. So one of the things, you know, and it's in the Bible as well, you know, teach a man how to fish, that type of thing, that same methodology, you know, very practical and it's critical as well. So we taught persons how to fish, you know, by empowering them through evening classes, entrepreneurship, that type of thing. And then ultimately, you start seeing the stories coming out where you have a gun girl or a gunman transforming into at the university graduate, going into an office space or starting a business. You know, those are powerful, inspiring stories. And those are the type of stories that I love. You know, the strategy that we need to take now as individuals is connecting to the persons who are known and have them take you into their space so that you can have a platform that is either local with enough people, regional or international, so you can create visibility around the impact that you are having.
Right.
And I just want to segue into the fact that we're always 2 contacts away from our dream contact person. For example, one day I hope to meet Tim Draper, my one contact away from Tim is ready, you know? So yes, so it's that type
So
of connections that we need to start making as Caribbean people.
Yep.
So it's partnership, partnership, partnership. And it goes back to Sustainable Development Goal number 17 that
Yep.
talks about partnership. And as a people, we need to really learn the importance of the collective and not just partnership in terms of, all right, I'm going to sign an MOU with you, and then it sits on a desk in a cabinet, gather some dust, and we tick it off and MOU was signed. No. We're talking about the type of partnership that's nested in the Agile Manifesto that looks at creating impact and responding to change over comprehensive documentation, you know, and partnerships over contract negotiation. It's not that documentation isn't important, but we value the things that create the most value at the end of the day. So the response to that is partnerships, partnership, partnership, and allowing yourself to be able to leverage your partnership network as well. That's very, very important.
Love it, Lisa. Partnership and action. And if I can share, Lisa is I call her a connector, but she embodies what she's speaking about now when it comes to partnerships. And a shining example of that was with the Stronger Together campaign when we were raising the funds for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, how they were impacted and are still being impacted by the volcano. And the fact that you could work and through partnerships, through relationships, bring all of these different regional and international persons to the table and mobilize them to take action and to deliver results. No MOUs, no contracts, but again, just relationships and partnerships to tell the story of what was taking place in St. Vincent, to empower the people and to allow persons internationally and regionally then to contribute and support what was taking place there. That is a shining example of what Lisa is talking about now, and I just had to kind of plug that, Lisa.
Yeah. And just to interject a little bit as well, to really emphasize the importance of trust in relationship building. Yes? And I'm not going to say to you that I'm 100% perfect when it comes to trust, but we have to implement some form of trust as Caribbean people as we go ahead and engage partners. For me, partnership is more important than money. Your network is more important than money.
Absolutely.
Any day whatsoever, you know, and it's not only about who you know, but it's about who knows you.
Yes.
And it ties back into creating that stage. And I'll give you an example. Now we're on this call right now, with about five of us, four of us on this call now as the panel. Tahir as the moderator, 3 other persons. There are probably about 100 or so persons online watching this right now. I don't know any of these persons, and I wish to meet them at some point, you know. But by virtue of me being on this platform, or Zwede being on the platform, you become known. Therefore, there's a next level of opportunity that is being unlocked right there that you don't even know about. And that is the power and importance of creating stages, really. That's also very important. You know, we've been able to use the SDM, use partnership to pull off the Caribbean's largest sustainable development movement. We amassed 119 partnerships for SDM 2020, valued at over $1.4 million US. And this is not just cash, but it's about the equity that persons were able to contribute into that and the value that was created out of that. So it's very important. And I would advise, if there are any financial persons listening on this webinar, that value created is not just about dollars and cents in a bank account. And please, even when we're going to create and prepare our impact reports and our outcome reports, the value of somebody coming on and investing time to prepare for a webinar, for example, you know, there's a particular value that goes on the brand of that individual. There's a value that goes on their time. So as the event organizer, value that, or ask the person, look, I want you to send me an invoice, even though you're working pro bono, and let me know exactly what this would cost if I was paying you to do this. And then you use that to calculate your value. you know? And
Yeah.
that is how we need to start thinking as Caribbean people in terms of partnerships. I have people in my network that I'm always connecting with people. Clients become friends, people that I meet for the very first time. I have had my network grown extensively across the Eastern Caribbean and other parts of the world since coming at OACS Commission, because I'm an evangelist when it comes to partnerships and connections, and not just that, but maintaining the connections. So it's not just about connecting with people, but growing that and maintaining the connections and being authentic about it. Authenticity is critical. You can't run away from that because people know when you're not real.
Facts,
Yeah.
facts. And what Lisa just said was important because a lot of times people say, well, I want to network, I want to connect up with as many people as possible. I want to build my network and build my LinkedIn following and all of this. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships, and it goes back to trust and honesty and creating value and understanding. Like Lisa said, value is not just about money. I have this conversation with my team all the time. I will do things for $0 just because you see the value and the opportunity outside of the money. And I think regionally we need to tap into that and understand everything isn't just about the dollar I can receive in my hand, but it's about the value of this relationship in the long run, and not just the value I can extract from the relationship. More importantly, what value can I bring to this relationship? So yeah, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so we're in the last section, guys. We're almost there, and you guys have shared and contributed meaningfully to the discussion. I think everyone here has received some. Can anyone say that they've received a nugget, some nugget they can use? Yeah, we'll get to the panel in a second. I'll have one or two persons ask questions. But my last section is really on co-creating our transformation. And I think this goes back to how you started, Lisa, or one of the things you touched on with the competition, right? And so the question is, do Caribbean people see themselves as co-creators in our regional transformation? And what are some of the challenges in pulling persons together around the vision? My number one answer would be seeing someone else as a threat, seeing persons that are growing, seeing other success stories as a threat, as competition, as something to eliminate, somebody to diminish, as opposed to someone to come together and support and say, when you win, I win. Because I'm not competing with you, I'm competing with myself. So the better you do, that is affirmation. That is an affirmation for me that if I continue doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I will do well as well. But everyone doesn't see it that way. So that would be my answer. What are some of the challenges in pulling persons together around this vision that we are co-creators? We have to work together to see the transformation that we'd like to realize regionally. And I'll start with you, Dawson. Last time I started with Sweetie.
Okay, so I think you touched on it. Lisa mentioned, and I was nodding quite a bit as Lisa was speaking earlier, because I'm going to say your competition can be your best partner.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a shift that needs to happen back to mindset again. So the question is, how do we change that fear of competition? And we started a discussion talking about that. There is a fear of competition in our region, but we really need to fall in love with competition. And the reason a competitor makes a good partner is because you're going after the same market space, you're going after the same opportunity. They have probably seen some of the same hurdles, they've seen some you have not seen, you have seen some that person hasn't seen, and the sharing of knowledge is power. And I think that's a basic, not just of a digital discussion. That's a life principle, I believe. And so I do believe it starts with the sharing of knowledge. And I think, once we start sharing, I think barriers start coming down, because we start understanding that we're not in this alone.
Right.
And some of the same challenges that we're facing, somebody that we see ourselves as competing against is. Yeah. And maybe the good news is they may have found a way over that barrier and maybe willing to share that with you. But we won't ever find that out until we start talking to each other. So I think it really starts with opening the conversation and getting the conversation going.
Lovely. Ready?
Yes. Hold on. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. Just leave it a little bit. sorry about that. I had to take a little message here. Apologies.
No problem, no problem. You're conducting
Can you
business.
just repeat?
Yeah, no, my question was
Yeah,
really,
yeah, literally.
my question was related to what are some of the challenges that we face as a region in pulling persons together around this vision, around this idea that we are co-creators and we have to work together collaboratively to manifest this regional transformation. What are some of the challenges that we face? And Dawson
Well,
spoke about,
I think
go ahead.
well, from what you would have said, you competition is definitely a big aspect of it. I think um, we view competition the wrong way in the Caribbean, and competition can be a good thing. Competition spurs innovation, but also an interesting scenario that happened during the same program I was in. What we're doing with Blue, we're building something not only for the Caribbean, but for the African continent as well. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can see you. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, yeah. And there was another participant a young lady who was doing something. She had a similar idea, and she was planning to do it in South Africa for Africa. The Draper organization, I believe they intentionally put us together in multiple scenarios to see how we would have potentially dealt with competition, right? You know, I think that there is, even though they are competitors, I think that there are smart and strategic ways that you could work collaboratively together for a better outcome for both organizations. And this is where Lisa comes in with partnerships. So I think that ultimately a smart partnership is a strategic play even amongst competitors. So we have to, I think, view more of a collaborative approach. I think that is the direction that we have to utilize moving forward. So I agree, competition is definitely one of the things that stifle us as businesses. It creates a level of fear, and then we all kind of, you hear about this crab in the barrel kind of mentality. We all kind of fight each other for what, So I think that strategic partnerships is ideal, and that is something that I really look into to scale at a much faster rate. I think that is, if you really want to get places at a sustainable and quicker pace, strategic partnerships, I think, is the way forward. So I definitely agree with Lisa on that, and I agree with you as in terms of competition being one of the barriers to us really moving forward. But strategic partnerships is definitely, I think, the way forward.
Okay, nice. Lisa?
Yes, certainly. Just to add another perspective as well, when you think about the whole aspect of competition. A few years ago, I was introduced to the concept of blue ocean strategy by a former chairman of a company that I was working with. He gifted everyone on the senior management team a copy of Blue Ocean that was written by Chan Kim, a South Korean business professor. And I think I was probably the only person who read the book. It's cover to cover. But the concept of blue ocean is just so critical.
Yeah.
And what that is really is creating market space that is uncontested, right? Because when you have a lot of sharks in the sea competing for the same space, the ocean becomes bloody and red. You want to stay away from that space right there. So competition is still happening, but carve out a niche in the market where you dominate within that space and feel comfortable dominating as well. So when you do that, your competitors, you start seeing your competitors as allies, And when the copycats come and start doing what you're doing, you re-evaluate your business model, recalibrate it and re-pivot it. And this is something that was developed in 2005, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and it's still relevant. And I do believe that that particular strategy needs to still be taught in business schools right now. Probably it is, but a lot of entrepreneurs don't go to business school, but they are talented, raw talent for business and a passion for business as well. But that concept needs to be taught in the accelerator and the incubator programs also, so that persons can constantly be evaluating your situation and your circumstance. And just going as recent back as 2020 when COVID-19 hit us right there, a lot of persons were comfortable with their business models. A lot of organizations were comfortable with the way in which they were operating. And because some organizations are so archaic and still operating in a type of dinosaur era, they were unable to make that transition in a very agile way, and I'm hoping that as a country, as a region, as a locale, that we would have learned the lessons from the crisis and the problems that were amplified in the crisis, because they were always there, they were just amplified because a crisis is happening, and still happening. I'm hoping that we would have learned those lessons and understand the importance of having a plan A, B, C, D, all the way down to Z, because you never ever know. So create uncontested market space. And I apply this particular concept to my personal life. I apply it even in terms of how I execute as a professional. My mindset is my mindset. I handle a department, whatever it is I'm running, similar to the principles of handling a business and being an entrepreneur to the organization. That's just my style and thing. But that is something that needs to be taught and inculcated. So while competition is important and good, don't be afraid of it. Just create market space. Create that space that is uncontested, whether at your school, at your church, at your organization, or at your home. It works. It's relatable and it's relevant.
And
it's important.
Yeah, I love that, Lisa. My mother actually told me about that book many years ago. I started reading it. I didn't finish reading it, but I'm into audiobooks now, so I'll add that to my book to read probably 2 weeks from now. I have one geared up for next week as well. But I love this idea of creating uncontested market space, because this is the approach that I really work to take, and we work to take within our organization as well. One of the conversations that I had with a regional decision maker a few months back was how I feel sometimes here in the Caribbean, we see a pie. Say a black cake. We eat black cake, right? So you see a black cake, and instead of seeing the whole cake and seeing the opportunity to carve out a slice for ourselves, we just see this little slice that's there, and we all want to fight over the crumbs from this little slice, as opposed to just going and carving out our own slice, thinking outside of the box, which is a cliche saying, but basically pulling yourself outside of what you're seeing and what everyone else is doing and saying, how can I do this differently? How can I improve on something? I see a problem. Instead of complaining about the problem, that problem is actually an opportunity to create a business, to start a community project. It's an opportunity to do something and not necessarily a problem in and of itself. Okay. Awesome. We're on the last question, then I'm going to open up to the floor just for a few questions from the group if anyone has any. Just from you guys' perspective, what are some of the examples of how Caribbean people demonstrate their vision in co-creating our transformation? And I'll say that the Sustainable Development Movement is 100,000% one of those examples of how Caribbean people can come together to demonstrate their vision in co-creating our regional transformation. Do you guys have any other ideas or examples of any things that are taking place in the space that persons could be aware of or should be aware of, that they can be a part of to co-create our future here in the region?
I'll take it.
Okay.
What I did is I tried to think about, in terms of responding to this, I tried to think about, creators I've seen in different spaces from different countries. And I'll just kick off by listing a few people, and also listing some of the change that we have also seen digitally in this part of the world. Sadly, and I'll touch on this, COVID was the catalyst, and I hope we don't need another COVID event or a COVID-like event to be the catalyst for this type of change in our region. But what I think it's shown us is that we can do it, because we have done it.
Yeah.
So I hope what we have learned is that we don't need to wait. We don't need to be second or even a third, in moving into some of these spaces. But what I did is I just went through a list of persons, and I'll just mention some of the people that I've seen doing some digital transformation and hopefully share their names and what they're doing, and hopefully the audience will be able to go and have a look at some of these folks. So there's a lawyer in St. Vincent by the name of Jadrick Cummings. He has a podcast by the name of A Lawyer and a Policy Analyst Walk into a Bar. So, and he's Vincentian, all right? There's Anna K. Green, St. Lucian. She does a series on social media, which speaks to financial freedom, you know, and financial health. Fiona Compton, you know, daughter of well-known former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, has a page on Instagram, Know Your Caribbean. There's a lot of storytelling there, as we're talking about storytelling. Great platform. Jelan Cumberbatch, he is Trinidadian, known in the music management space. He does a podcast speaking to all things about music education, publishing, engineering, and anything that has to do with the topic of music. I'll mention Nadia Baston. I think she's an artist who, during COVID, obviously noting the lack of being on physical stage, turned to TikTok. I think she became one of the most popular TikTokers from our region in a very short space of time. Amazing. There's Denise Million. She's a popular Trinidadian singer who uses, you know, musically a mashup that allows her to show off her vocal ability and post those videos on social media. Let's talk about what's happening in the digital space in the region. We've seen the emergence of the fintech space is exploding in the region right now.
Yep.
There's JAD in St. Kitts. There's Dcash, that's the Eastern Central Bank's wallet that's been rolled out in Grenada. It's now being rolled out in St. Vincent. There's PissSwift in St. Vincent. There's Squeeze Cash also in St. Vincent. There's Penny Pinch in St. Lucia. The delivery app space is exploding in the Caribbean. In Jamaica, there are several: Hugo, Seven Crave, Quick Plate. In Trinidad, there's Rideshare Trinidad. So I mention all this to say we are in the space now, and there is the opportunity. The platforms exist, and we are here talking about storytelling, and we're talking about the platforms that we have the ability to tell those stories through, and the platforms that we can use. And I've mentioned a few persons who are using those platforms. Some of them you may know. I hope we'll have a look at some of the others I mentioned that you may not be so familiar with. But we have Caribbean people who are doing this. There is the opportunity for us to begin, if we haven't begun, to start looking at what can we do? How do we become a part of this process? And what is my story that I want to tell? And as I mentioned earlier, with the number of platforms out there today, there's nothing stopping us from finding the right one or the group of platforms that will allow us to do that.
Lovely, lovely. Zwede?
All right, yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had
No
a
problem.
technical difficulty.
No problem.
From what is existing there, I mean, people as Dawson indicated, there are some parties that pivot and create these new opportunities. And then also there are folks even in Trinidad across the Caribbean who are trying different ventures, trying things like NFTs and getting in that space. So definitely encourage folks to, you know, be as sort of like open-minded and receiving to some of these new opportunities. And, you know, do a little bit of research. But from some of the things that I could safely say that we are working on specifically is supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem for the Caribbean. And this aligns well with one of Lisa's interests. So I can say that we have been approved by the Draper organization, for example, to set up what they call a Draper Startup House. We're starting in Trinidad and Tobago, and the idea is to scale this across the Caribbean region. And what Draper Startup House is, it's a ecosystem, like a living co-working space that is welcoming to entrepreneurs and business owners. And essentially, they partner either with existing infrastructure or they would have built, they have actually their own hotels and spaces where to provide mentorships, meetups, little networking events, but also entrepreneurs and business people who travel and part of the ecosystem, they get to like stay there at extremely discounted rates and stuff like that. So they are working hands-on, support developing the entrepreneurial and tech ecosystems in emerging markets. Draper Startup House already is in 18 countries So they grant us the next license to set up in Trinidad. So they would be having folks across on the ground. So I think they'll be sending like 2 folks to live in Trinidad for a couple months to help us kick it off. They also have a venture fund attached to it. So Draper Startup House has its own VC fund called Draper Startup House Ventures, where they actually fund some of the companies that are in these emerging markets that they
That's
believe
amazing.
would be good fits. So we would be setting up one in Trinidad and Tobago, and the idea is eventually to not just have a space that, let's say, we're renting, but the idea is to create an entire ecosystem. So seeing it live, what Tim Draper has in Silicon Valley is he has a hotel. He bought over the Benjamin Franklin Hotel, converted it to a university and living space. So it's you could go there, you could live there like a hotel, but also you could participate in a program there, but it's a hotel all year round as part of the ecosystem member. It's $50 a night for me to stay at that hotel. That is, you're not getting $50 a night
that's
in
awesome.
California just for a tour. And is not to say is nothing raggedy, it's a proper infrastructure. And you get access to, it has a pool, it has co-working space, you can get your own room across the street. He has a co-working zone, a modern co-working zone, like high-tech stuff, like when you press a button, the height of the desk could adjust up and down. So when you're thinking about getting people engaged, right, you have to think about these creative ideas. Like the front desk of his co-working zone across the street is a Tesla. So he has this partnership with Tesla. He is an early Tesla investor. So they cut a Tesla car in half and they create a front desk and really cool but interactive engagements. And that is his co-working space across the street. And then to the right of the living space, you have an entertainment zone. So it's like a big arcade, but it's submerged with the latest technology. So AR experiences, VR experiences. And he created an entire ecosystem here. There's a food spot right next door. So you can literally live there, get to experience networking with like-minded people. So once you come downstairs, it's a co-working space. But you could just do your own business. You could go to your meetings and you could use that as a hub to create opportunities and connect with people, So I think that the plan is to adopt similar models, which they have created Draper Startup House for. So we'll be working on this plan from October in Trinidad, and the idea is to scale it throughout the region to where we have a potential Draper Startup House in every Caribbean island. So these are the conversations that I could say I'm safely having or have had with Tim Draper personally. And he's excited to come and visit the Caribbean. So, he said he want to come to the Caribbean, want to explore these opportunities. And these are productive guys. So I think that the only thing we have to really consider is that how do we now tie this as well towards increasing productivity of the Caribbean? And they look to come to places where they have a minimum level of infrastructure. So if they could work and they could be productive, they would welcome coming to the Caribbean. And all they need to work really is a good internet connection and a good living place. So believe it or not, they have guys like that looking for these opportunities now. And he's one of the largest cryptocurrency holders in the world. He has a very large crypto asset. He was the very first investor in Robinhood, very first investor in Coinbase. I laugh when I look at a post that he made on LinkedIn the other day. He said he was the first investor in Robinhood. That was 1,000x his money at IPO today. Good job to his team. These are the kind of investments these guys are making, but also they are looking to and willing to potentially invest in Caribbean organizations, Caribbean founders, Caribbean entities, because again, through technology as well, the ideas could scale massively across the world. So they are looking for some of these hidden gems that are hidden in the Caribbean. So they are strategic partnerships, and then creating as much of these opportunities and as the ties to the grassroots level, they have to be on the ground. So I think that regardless of, you might build all the technology and what, but you have to have a presence on the ground. So I think that having this presence on the ground and really impacting the culture is what folks need to be doing. And if they're doing that, well, then I think collectively we just take a group to start a movement. So if we all doing our pieces, eventually they all come together.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zwede. That is amazing news, and we're looking forward to seeing that come to life and supporting you in any way possible there. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is brilliant. Not only are you guys creating an ecosystem and a space where people can learn and grow, but you're also providing the opportunity, or there'll be the opportunity for people's ideas to be funded and for them to amplify their stories and their messages. That is this question. That is the answer right there. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Lisa?
I could spell out. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I could spell out the news as well too. I know we're going to do some ambassador relationships to where the OECS, we could facilitate partnerships to where the members could stay across at their facilities. So these are conversations we're having, and they are welcoming. So they appointed me the Caribbean ambassador for Draper to find people like yourself to be welcome into their ecosystem, to expand their network. So they are a very forward-thinking and dynamic team. So again, these models, they have been pretty much done and executed in other areas. And again, just bridging these gaps. So these are conversations that we're having, and they would be Draper staff also in another region, in the Caribbean. So again, if people tune in to this, I would welcome you guys to reach out to myself, reach out to Lisa. We could drop an email address or something, and they would welcome these across the region. So think bigger. If you were just thinking small, think bigger. That is what I want to challenge you guys now to think bigger.
100%.
Something of massive impact.
100%. I'll be in touch on that, Zoe. Nice. Lisa?
I'm just sitting here, just smiling and seeing partnership fruits come to life through Zwedi and other impactful SDM ambassadors such as yourself. And just to share on the last question that you asked, the OECS Commission has signed a partnership agreement with the World Bank to execute a regional digital transformation project. The project is ongoing now, and countries that are beneficiaries of the project include Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And it's really earmarked to increase access to digital services technologies by government, businesses, individuals in all of these participating countries. So it's widespread. I'm saying that's something exciting that is ongoing now. I know that the team is doing some groundwork for execution. And the biggest storytelling platform in the world, the biggest storytelling sustainable development platform is coming up, and that's the SDM 2021 Summit on September 22 and 23, to be preceded by the Blue Economy Roundtable on September 21st. So if you do have persons have an interest in terms of the Blue Economy as it relates to monetizing that space that dominates 90% of our habitable area in the Caribbean, then SDM is where you need to be a part of that conversation. And we've moved it a bit further. What we've done is really to agitate action within that space as well. So we're moving from storytelling to agitating action. But each year, new stories emerge, and we continue to tell these stories. And the impact of the SDM continues to be tremendous. A lot of times persons come and say, tell me how much money we earned from SDM so far, or how much investments have we gathered in terms of monetary value. And sometimes I personally take offense to those things, because I think it is absolutely shallow-minded, in all honesty. It is about building. Rome was not created in a day. The world wasn't built in a day. And even though it probably was, Jesus or the Lord spoke it into being in a matter of hours, things take time to develop. And you plant seeds and you expand on partnerships. I mean, if Zwedi tell you, he has been having this conversation with the Draper people for years now. And it just basically was brought to fruition. So we need to give ourselves time as well. So being agile translates into being efficient in terms of the processes, but you have to wait and be patient for the fruits to really come to fruition.
Absolutely. Lovely. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Dawson. Thank you, Zwedi. You guys have been amazing. I am so pleased with this discussion and how this panned out. I want to open it up. I don't know if anyone has any questions that you'd like to ask. Please come right up. Come on up. Carshel. Lovely.
Good evening. Let me see if they can see me. Oh, over there. All right. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. I've had the privilege to work with Lisa, partner with Lisa. I've also had the privilege to work with Dawson on the panel. Dawson and I work together in Digital in Angola, and of course, working with Tahira. So I think the last person I need to collaborate with is Kwesi, and I've already sent him Zwedi. I've already sent him a message for collaboration. My name is Chriselle Jean Charles, and I am a new entrepreneur. I just launched my business, Advanced Company Group, and it's a digital solutions company.
We're not hearing Tahira. The audio went.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Hardly.
Can you hear me? All right. So I recently launched a business, Advanced Company Group, and it's pretty much a digital solutions business that I really want to take off because I think it's the future of technology, future of everything entrepreneur. So I think my question tonight is, now that we understand that we have to be intentional, we have to set the stage, and we have to bring our own chair to the table, I think my question for each of you is, what does success mean to you? What do you see as success in your own space?
Love that question, Chriselle. Who's going first? Zwedi's camera came on. That means Zwedi's ready to talk. Hold on, we can't hear Zwedi. Could we get some volume on Zwedi, please? You want to go ahead and talk, Zwedi? Yeah, we can barely hear him.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, we can hear you very well now. Go ahead.
I think my internet here at the hotel is a little bit slow right now, but yeah. For me, it's about success for me is creating as much impact as possible, you know? Is what affects as much lives as possible in an impactful way, you know? I have a motto is really create impact, have fun and make money. That's the motto I go by, you know? And
like that.
if you could impact millions of lives positively, I mean, whatever mechanism that is through, whether it is music, whether it is a product, that means that you are doing something successful. And if you're smart, you find a way to monetize it. You know, so that is how I see it. I see it. For me, it's really, and that is why I get into technology afterwards, you know, because I mean, being in sports, a lot of sports, it's sort of like a selfish career, especially like track and field, like individual sport. I mean, I've always seen entrepreneurship as like the pathway to give back and to help others, you know. So that was something that was really a core focus for me. So it's really about how big of an impact I could create, you know. So in technology, it could impact potentially billions of lives, you know. So I think that again, the challenge is for people to think bigger. For me, is really about impacting as much lives as possible, and then the natural hustle and business man in me find a way to monetize it, you know. And the bigger it is, the bigger the monetary returns or rewards you get back. So think impact first, and then find a way to monetize it. I think with that strategy, you could do a lot more.
Absolutely. Dawson?
Mm-hmm.
So success for me is a journey. It's continuous. And you know, we talked about failure. So for me, it's learn, implement, learn, implement, learn, implement, learn, implement. If I'm not learning and I'm not implementing, I'm not successful.
Yeah.
And that's how I define success personally. And when we do that, we will impact not only our lives, but positively the lives of the people around us. So to touch on Zwedi's point, because that is also a measure of success, is how have we impacted our own lives and the lives of other people around us to also be successful.
Lovely. Lisa?
Yeah. Can I tell you that I have failed so many times? I failed privately. I have failed publicly. And I failed and failed and failed to the point where failure became an ally in the tunnel of growth for my life. Yeah?
Yeah.
And success for me has to do with leaving behind a legacy that is defined as where persons can go back to that and become at the best version of themselves. And I had a privilege of moderating a session that was being delivered by Dr. Ibukun Awoshipa out of Nigeria. And she started that session by saying, I want to die empty. And that particular sentence, it resonated so deep with me. Yeah? I start out each year, and this might sound a little cliche, but for me it's not, it's reality. And I write down, I have a vision board.
Yeah.
And just like about 2 weeks ago, I looked at my vision board for 2021, and I'm 70% through achieving the things that I set out doing.
Amazing.
You know? And some of it was intentional and deliberate, some of it was not. The opportunities just came, right? And the opportunities came because of where I believe my mind was. You know, you create your world by creating the world first inside of your mind. That's very important. And whatever you create inside of that mind is what you will attract. Believe it or not, it is true. It has happened time and time again. So the concept of dying empty, dying devoid of all gifts and talents that you have, leave them here to create impact and continue creating impact when you leave. That for me is the nucleus of success. That is what constitutes success for me.
Amazing, yeah. And I mean, how do I go after that? For me, Carshel, I would say, you know, I set up a mantra or a personal life statement probably in 2011. Can't remember how, that's 10 years ago. So I'd have been 22 doing the math. But just to create opportunities for other people to live their dreams. And I'm a very highly competitive person. So competing with myself and getting better and pushing myself. Sometimes people, Lisa, you ask, you know, can you take on more? Yes. The answer will always be yes, to continue to push myself and to create opportunities for others to live their dreams. How I've recently started to measure success is how much can I give back? And I know, well, I gotta have to be able to pay my bills, I have to be able to do this, that, and the other. And so every year I want to be able to contribute more. Every year I want to be able to give back more to the communities that I'm a part of and to the people I have the opportunity to connect with. So the better I do, the more I can give back. So yeah, creating opportunities for other people to live their dreams is the way I define success. Anybody else? Any other questions? We'll take one or two more questions and then we'll wrap up. No questions? You have a question? No? Okay. Okay. That's good. All right, that's it, guys. That's it. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks, but I am thoroughly satisfied with just the course of this dialogue and what we've been able to pull from it. Pardon me? No. Yeah, and I just want to thank each and every one of you again for making the time.
That's it, guys. That's it. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks, but I am thoroughly satisfied.
I think we have a bit of an echo.
What we've been able to.
Yeah, but just thanking you guys for taking the time to come on and share your perspective, share your experience, being so open and vulnerable at times to share your story. It's meant a lot, and I want to thank you all individually and collectively for joining, partaking in this conversation. So I'm not sure if anyone else has anything to close with, and I guess I'll start with you, Lisa. Just any closing remarks?
I will close with this quotation from Bob Marley. And he said that some people feel the rain, others get wet. Okay? Yeah. So I encourage everybody on this call, watching on social media, not just to get wet. Don't just get wet, but truly feel the rain. Yeah?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Dawson?
Oh yeah, I'll just close by saying thank you for having me to hear it. It's been good. I've learned, and I hope that we have been a panel that has hopefully imparted some knowledge today to the audience. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Zweri?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity as well. It was a great panel, and I look forward to staying in contact with you guys and seeing how best we could create good partnerships and good impact across the region. So looking forward to that. And just to everybody, I think bigger and do more. That is what we need to do. Think bigger and do more.
Think we can do more.
Right, so-
Love it.
Yeah,
Love
that's
it. Thank you guys, and thank you to everyone that took the time to tune in. Thank you to those that took the time to attend this evening. It has been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.
It was fun to hear. Thanks for having me. I love
Absolutely.
it.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.